On August 4th, a commercial vessel navigating the Black Sea was hit by a targeted military drone strike. Three crew members were injured and the ship was severely damaged. The nature of the regional conflict has evolved. Combat is no longer restricted to military engagements. It is now actively focused on the cargo ships and private supply lines that move through these waters. In response, Turkey stepped in with a severe measure. They began imposing strict restrictions on the flow of all commercial shipping attempting to enter the Black Sea. By artificially choking this single waterway, Turkey is creating a significant disruption in the global supply chain, demonstrating the immense leverage they hold over the region's stability. Look at the geography of the Black Sea. It is a massive, nearly enclosed body of water, and all maritime traffic has only one viable exit to the global ocean, a single narrow corridor cutting right through dense urban shorelines. Within this enclosed space, civilian ports, oil terminals, and stationary cargo vessels, massive targets exposed on the open water, have become routine marks for long range missiles and drone operators. Because there is no alternative route, any violence inside the basin traps international merchant ships. A localized territorial dispute becomes a direct physical threat to global trade security. To trace the route, a ship travels from the Mediterranean into the Aegean Sea. It squeezes through the narrow Dardanelles Strait into the Sea of Marmara. Finally, it faces the Bosphorus Strait, depositing the ship into the Black Sea. Four nations, Russia, Ukraine, Romania, and Bulgaria, rely entirely on this exact sequence of waterways to import goods and export their resources. Because Turkey's sovereign territory surrounds every inch of these straits, this geological formation grants Ankara absolute unilateral authority over the primary maritime lifeline for Eastern Europe. This geographical authority is regulated by international law, specifically the Montreux Convention, signed in 1936. The treaty establishes two clear standards. Commercial vessels carrying trade goods are guaranteed free passage, while military warships are subject to strict limitations regarding how many can enter and how long they can stay. When conflict broke out in 2022, Turkey invoked the treaty's wartime provisions. They successfully closed the straits to active naval warships from both Russia and NATO, keeping foreign naval escalations out of the Black Sea. But an 80-year-old treaty written for dreadnoughts and destroyers offers very little guidance today. It was designed strictly to contain state level naval combat, leaving it unequipped to handle a modern war where small drones attack private merchant ships. This creates a severe legal paradox. Under the Montreux Convention, Turkey cannot legally close the straits to commercial ships, even when those ships are under active threat from drone strikes. To get around this, Turkey is using a loophole. Instead of declaring an official blockade, they are implementing temporary restrictions, using safety inspections and administrative delays to slow traffic through the tight urban corridor to a crawl. The goal is diplomatic leverage. By delaying the shipment of valuable goods, Ankara is placing mounting economic pressure on both Russia and Ukraine to stop firing at the ports and commercial lanes. Without the right to shut the gates entirely, Turkey is weaponizing bureaucratic friction to force a military de escalation that international courts cannot execute themselves. The effects of this friction ripple outward immediately. The Black Sea is a major energy hub with millions of barrels of crude oil and refined petroleum products originating from Russian ports and relying on this route to reach the open market. It is also one of the world's most critical agricultural breadbaskets. Massive volumes of raw grain, wheat, and sunflower products from both Russia and Ukraine flow out of this basin to feed populations abroad. When ships are forced to wait at the Turkish straits, the global supply of these commodities shrinks. That scarcity translates into price hikes for energy and increased costs for staple foods worldwide. Beyond the cargo, thousands of international seafarers find themselves trapped in a dangerous holding pattern, sitting on massive targets in hazardous waters while they wait for clearance. When these volumes are stalled at a single geographic point, the supply shock travels through the global economy, raising costs for consumers on nearly every continent. We saw exactly how this plays out during the initial 2022 supply shocks. When Black Sea exports stalled, nations panicked. India, for example, enacted emergency bans on its own domestic wheat and rice exports to protect its local supply. Those protective measures create a cascading chain reaction. When major producers lock down their exports, Nations that rely on those shipments face severe shortages and the risk of rising food insecurity. Turkey is now walking an incredibly precarious geopolitical tightrope. They have to balance civilian safety, regional stability, and their obligations under international law, all without stopping the forward momentum of the global economy. It highlights a vulnerability in how the modern world operates. When a critical trade route narrows to just a few miles wide, one government's attempt to enforce peace can effectively freeze the economic lifeblood of the entire globe.